Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on creating 360-degree views of any data with TIBCO and AWS. My name is Stephen Archit. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at TIBCO. Joining me is my colleague, Conrad Drung.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Thanks, Conrad. And joining us from AWS, our featured guest, Jorge Lopez. He's a global lead in their data analytics segment. Jorge?
Hi, everyone.
Great. So I think Jorge is going to go ahead and get started here, going to walk us through a little bit of AWS, and then we'll talk about how you can combine those capabilities with TIBCO and AWS to build these views of any data.
Thank you, Steve. So it's been already 3 years since The Economist declared that the world's most valuable resource was no longer oil, but data. And sure enough, just a few weeks ago, we all learned that the Dow Jones Industrial finally dropped its oldest member, one of the big oil giants. So as of September, Chevron remains the only energy stock in the Dow index. At Amazon, we understood the value of data, even from our early days. And what you see on the left could be considered an early representation of the business model. The premise is that if you can deliver a positive customer experience, then more users will come. And this in turn attracts new sellers who want to position products on your properties, increasing the selection and the customer experience. This creates a flywheel that also allows you to gain economies of scale to lower your cost structure and then pass those savings to the consumer. Now, this looks like a pretty simple concept. However, what's often overlooked is what's behind this model. It is data. Data is what makes this possible. So I went ahead and built my own geeky version of this diagram. And the point is that if you are able to store every relevant data point about your business and have the ability to analyze all of that data in different ways and distill the data down to actionable insights, it will fuel innovation and lead to a competitive advantage. But the challenge is that traditional architectures, the legacy on-prem data warehouse, can no longer keep up with the requirements of the business. For data to be a differentiator, organizations need to capture and store new non-relational data at exabyte scale. This includes data from new devices, data from machines, from IoT devices, log files, clickstream data, mobile devices, and social media, and more. These systems often have very rigid schema designs, making it hard to incorporate data from disparate sources. And they were very expensive to deploy, scale, and operate. All of this results in organizations often ending up with multiple data silos, which makes it very difficult to get a complete view of their business and leverage all their data for competitive advantage. And that's why we see a lot of our customers moving away from traditional on-prem data warehousing approaches to a modern data architecture on the cloud, which allows for a wide range of data types and analytics at a much lower cost. And how exactly are companies modernizing their architectures to fuel business innovation? Well, rather than giving you a long and comprehensive list on this session, I would like to focus on 3 trends. Number 1 is data lakes. We see leading organizations across all industries and sizes moving to data lake architectures. A data lake is an architectural approach that allows you to store massive amounts of data into a central repository. So it's readily available to be categorized, processed, analyzed, and consumed by diverse groups within an organization. And this is exactly the type of architecture that you can build on AWS. A data lake allows you to store virtually any type of data you need and run analytics on top of it, including advanced data science and machine learning, without moving the data. Since data can be stored as is, there is no need to convert it to a predefined schema, and you no longer need to know what questions you want to ask from your data beforehand. A data lake brings many benefits. One of them is lower costs. But I would like to focus on innovation. If you think about it, experimentation drives innovation. The more experiments you can run, the more you can innovate. That's why a modern data architecture in the cloud is key to business innovation. A data lake on AWS provides a broad set of analytic engines and tools that you can use to experiment. Experiments are very low cost. When you finish the experiment, you just shut everything down, you just pay as you go, you just pay for what you use. And you can get results fairly quickly. So that if an experiment fails, you can just take the learnings and move on to the next one. Number 2 is the breadth of analytic options and open standards. Customers like the freedom to use the best tool for the job. They've realized that the model of the past, monolithic architectures where the same tool, often a data warehouse, is used for all the analytic needs, is no longer useful. Instead, they want the freedom to store data in open formats and then use the best tool for that specific style of analytics. With AWS, customers can store data in virtually any format, such as Parquet, ORC, CSV, Avro, and so on Amazon S3. Then, they can use services such as Amazon Redshift for data warehousing workloads, or Athena to run interactive queries. They can use Kinesis Analytics to run real-time queries on streaming data, or run experiments using big data frameworks such as Spark and Hive with Amazon EMR. Then, moving at the top of the stack, customers can use Amazon QuickSight for visual analytics, or even artificial intelligence and machine learning services for predictive analytics. AWS also provides a very broad set of purpose-built databases. And sometimes customers ask, why do we need so many databases? Well, in short, this allows developers to build virtually any data application they need. Customers can use key-value databases like DynamoDB to build real-time applications that require extremely low latency. Or they can use time series databases like Amazon TimeStream to collect, store, and process data sequenced by time. This is something typical of IoT applications. They can also use Amazon Neptune, a graph database, to easily spot relationships within data for social media analytics or fraud detection. Now, keep in mind, these are just a few examples of the type of applications our customers are building and the reason why these databases are so important. Moving on, we find data governance. Because the more data companies collect, store, and analyze for different purposes, the more critical it is for organizations to have a sound data governance strategy. At a very high level, data governance is about answering key questions about your data. Questions such as, what data am I collecting from my customers? Where did the data come from, and where is it stored? How is the data being secured? How and when is data deleted? Do we have permission to use the data in this or that particular way? Unfortunately, not all companies can answer these basic questions. But the landscape has changed significantly during the past 5 years. What used to be directives and good practices are now laws in effect that can result in devastating fines. Think about this. GDPR fines can be as high as 20 million euros or 4% of global revenue, whichever is greater. And this means that organizations are paying more attention than ever to data governance and security. On this front, AWS has been architected to be one of the most flexible and secure cloud computing environments available today. And one of the nice things about AWS is that our customers inherit all the best practices, policies, architecture, and operational processes built to satisfy the requirements of our most security customers. In addition to our own services for security, identification, authentication, and encryption, AWS also supports a very broad set of compliance programs and security standards which can help customers satisfy compliance requirements for virtually every regulatory agency. Now, a key component of any data governance strategy are data catalogs, not only from a security and compliance point of view, but also when it comes to new business initiatives. Organizations need to know what data is available to them. Specifically, in the case of data lakes, being able to find data that has been cleansed, tokenized, encrypted, and made available in a refined or trusted zone is key. This can help users focus on the data that has the highest value. Similarly, any regulatory compliance initiative is built on a foundation of being able to document, audit, and trace information assets. So far, I've talked about 3 key trends that are enabling customers to use data as a competitive differentiator. So to summarize, these 3 aspects include the move to a modern data lake architecture, using the best tool for the job, leveraging a broad set of analytic engines and purpose-built databases to transform the customer experience, and including a sound data governance and security strategy by design. All of this will help you get a 360 degrees view of your business, a complete view, which in turn will help you use your data as an asset to accelerate innovation. Now, let's hear from Conrad on how AWS competency partner TIBCO can help you get there.
Thanks, Jorge. So as customers look at modernizing the data architecture, they need to think about all the different data sources. They need to think about governance and integration. And one of the great things about working with AWS is a lot of the kinds of data that you're going to need to produce a really robust 360, whether it's information that's transactional in nature or streaming in nature, maybe it's associative, something you might find in Graph. They've got it all. And that's one of the great things about working with them. So let's talk about that 360-degree view. So the business view of this. Why would you care, right? So I know there's some analysts out there like Mark Beyer from Gartner who say, it's not really customer 360, it's partner 360 because customer's actually a role. And he's right. But we're talking about shorthand here. So when you talk to the business, you ask them like, why would they care about customer 360? It's because if it's possible to gather all the information about that customer, about how they intersect with your value chain, your extended business network, how they intersect with your products and your suppliers, possibly not suppliers, but partners and whatnot, you can deliver better service. You can improve the way you deliver the services or products to them. But the thing about it is when you think about the pattern, the question is, are you really talking about a customer 360 or even a party 360? Or maybe are we thinking about 360 for anything? I mean, can we use the same architectural pattern to not only deal with 360 on those parties that may be customers or employees or suppliers or contacts, but can we use that same architecture to look at 360 for customers, products, suppliers, partners, patients and sales, locations, reference data? And what we would argue at TIBCO is the answer is yes. Let's not think about siloing the kinds of 360s, but let's build a more robust architecture, modern architecture to look at bringing all that information together in a way that allows you to see the intersections between these key business objects. So, basically the 360-degree view for anything is really about getting 360-degree views on what's important to your business. And the reality is what's important to your business is going to depend on your business. Right? For services companies, suppliers, probably not such a big deal. But for manufacturing companies, suppliers and materials management are very important. Same thing could be said about customers that sell B2C versus B2B. Maybe legal entities that you're having to do business with as a B2B type firm, or if you're selling directly to businesses like TIBCO is, that might be much more important. Whereas if you're much more of a retailer selling to individuals, you might be more interested in those individual parties that are consuming your products. So the big picture is taking those golden records, taking that master data, that up-to-date master data around all those key business entities and blending it with transactional information in a virtual way so you can see that picture and then providing this particular endpoint to any consumer. So how does it work? So Steve, we have quite a few customers of done 360s. Why don't you talk to us about KBTG?
Yeah, so Kasikorn Bank, it's one of the largest banks in Thailand. If it doesn't pop immediately to mind as a bank you recognize, but They are one of the largest banks in Thailand, and they were faced with some challenges around how to provide, as Conrad touched on, better customer experience, better customer service. With the rise of mobile banking, that is how most of their customers predominantly interact with the bank. They're not going into a brick and mortar location anymore. And one of the challenges that arose was that the customer data, depending on what sort of services they had with the bank, resided in different data silos. So for example, a checking account information was in one database, but savings account or a credit card or other services like a mortgage were all in different systems. So to enable a better customer experience, all of that data has to be virtually combined and then presented to that customer when they log into their account information on their mobile banking application. So using TIBCO capabilities, they're able to combine all that very quickly to provide essentially an account 360 view. So all of the different services that particular customer owns, they can now view that and consume that on their mobile phone. So they're getting a complete picture of what their current balances may be in their checking account, their savings account, what they may owe on their credit card, et cetera. So all of that is done, kind of behind the scenes, for the customer to improve their experience.
Thanks, Steve. So if we talk about how we're going to create that 360-degree view of anything, this is how TIBCO helps. It's really a couple of components. First, there's the master data management piece, and that's really about bringing together all of the information, all those different records that you have out there around those key business entities, whether they're customers, products, assets, materials, and then creating golden records. And we're going to create those golden records, maintain the source system IDs, largely to align the data from across the different data sources you have. Next, you've got data virtualization. And as Steve pointed out in his comments on Capricorn Bank, you're using this platform to grab all that information. In their case, they're grabbing account information from the different transactional systems. We can do the same thing. Grab that information, align that data with the master data management piece, so blend those records with the transactional data to create the complete view. And then finally, because a lot of times this information is going to be somewhat controlled. If it's customer data, as Jorge pointed out, there are controls now with things like GDPR, PIPEDA, or CCPA, where we do have to worry about who is looking at this information, how they're processing it. So controls has become a much more important thing. It's always been important. It's just become much more important from a regulatory perspective than before. So that's how we help. If we kind of break it down, kind of step by step, one of the first steps might be to pull information from those various sources. And these sources could be living on-prem or in the cloud. These could be transactional systems. It could be data lakes. It could be data warehouses and whatnot. But we're going to pull that information into MDM and then consolidate that data, get to that golden record, which means that we have the accurate and consistent information about that business entity. And then we're also retaining all the source system IDs, because when we think about the next phase, we're going to have to align that. So right here, we see this particular 360 viewpoint. I'm looking at a counterparty. So maybe this is a B2B example, or maybe we're talking about a supplier management type of example. And what I have in here is the unique golden ID or system ID I have inside the MDM system, but then I've got all the additional system IDs on the same record that help me align the data. And of course, because I'm capturing a lot of intrinsic information, kind of almost like demographic data about the counterparty, I can also produce these little hierarchies that show me, the counterparties by parent or by country or by sector. So the next phase here would be to use the data virtualization platform as a data integration tool to go out and grab the transactional information or the detail information that we're interested in from those source systems, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud, or whether they're relational or lakes or whatnot. But the idea is to grab all that information. And this is the data that we're interested in seeing as a consolidated set, and then take that data and then blend it with the master data to create these 360 endpoints, which we then serve up to data science or data virtualization, data science or data visualization or reporting systems. The net result would be something like you see here, where the same endpoint, which provides information that's master data in nature. So that would be things like the intrinsic details about the counterparties, their locations, their parents, the industry code or industries that they belong to. So you have all that reference and master data, and then you blend it with that transactional data. We can get these dashboards that allow different kinds of users to see different kinds of details about those endpoints. So in this case, On the left, what we see here is that classic sector-based view of my counterparties, where I'm using the master data and reference data, such as the industry sector, using the name, of course. And then I've got the transactional data here, which is showing me not just the aggregated exposure by sector, but also what did the exposure look like over time. Over here, what we're seeing is the same information, but instead of looking at it by sector, I'm now looking at it by corporate hierarchy. So when you think about counterparties, you've got a parent company and then an endless number of subsidiaries all the way down. And what we want to see is gather all the information up, look at it as a single name, say, how much exposure do we have to, say, Goldman? Not Goldman Sachs Asset Management Asia, but the whole thing, the whole Megillah. So that's what we're seeing over here. Now, finally, down here, we're taking a little bit more of that reference data, a little bit more of that intrinsic data. Where does this counterparty exist? What country are they in? And now aggregating the information by geography. One of the things that we've noticed, being a company that not only supplies data management infrastructure, but also analytical infrastructure, is that often the data science teams, the analytics teams, the reporting teams, they will pursue their own sourcing activities to grab the data they think they need to produce that view by sector, by counterparty, by geo. The net result is it's possible. It's not always going to happen, but it's possible in a lot of organizations that the choices that each one of these different individual analytics teams made to grab that data resulted in them making different assumptions, resulted in them taking different sources, resulted in them using different ways to align the information to meet their needs. So what that means is that when you're looking at this at the aggregated level in analytics, these dashboards are all slightly different. We're not entirely sure which one is quite correct. Or maybe they don't match, and that creates a lot of dissonance in the organization. Our viewpoint is that by taking this kind of architecture, where you are connecting all those different sources, such as all those sources you find in AWS, aligning them with master data, and producing one consistent endpoint which can be consumed by all the different analytical and data science consumers, you kind of maintain that consistency, that purity of the data, and you can make sure that the last thing people are debating is assumptions and sources and methods, but they're really talking about the critical business details they're seeing for all these different endpoints or these different business entities. So this is the generic view. It's just obviously not specific to AWS. So what does it look like within the AWS ecosystem? So this is how it all comes together inside the AWS ecosystem. One thing to note is that all of the TIBCO products you see on here have been architected to take full advantage of AWS and all the AWS services. All right, to wrap it up, why TIBCO for 360-degree views of AnyData? Well, first and foremost, we're open. And so TIBCO is one of the last remaining independent enterprise infrastructure software vendors, and we got infrastructure for everything, but just because we do doesn't mean you got to use it all. So we're open and we can connect with virtually anything. It's also designed for agile teamwork. So the different ways and the different maybe techniques you use to connect and master and virtualize, cache your data, you kind of do what you want, do what's good for your business. We're not going to be very prescriptive on how you implement, and I don't think AWS is either. And finally, we're enterprise grade. So TIBCO has a long history providing infrastructure for all kinds of industries, all kinds of real-time activities, and those organizations rely upon us to help them make sure that they can meet their operational, analytical, and governance needs. And it's built for, quite frankly, scale, multi-cloud, and also, AI and IoT. And finally, to learn more, visit www.tibco.com/AWS. And thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Steve. And thank you for listening to our webinar. Have a great day.